Hey guys, it's Mason, and this is Wrestling in the Dark, the only professional wrestling podcast brought to you by a blind wrestling fan. WWE Stomping Grounds is on Sunday, and if there's one thing that I always enjoy about a pay-per-view, it's the predictions, so that's what I'm bringing you today. It's my predictions for WWE Stomping Ground. Fantasy versus reality rules are in effect. It's what would I do versus what I think WWE will do. And for the first time ever, with nothing but pride on the line, predictions will never be clean again because I am head-to-head with the filthiest man in the land. It's Dirty Dan. He sent his predictions in, and we'll see who comes out on top with that one, won't we? Spoiler alert, probably me. Up first, it's Big E and Xavier Woods of the New Day versus Owens and Zayn. This one isn't a hard choice for me when it comes to what I would do. Big E hasn't been back for long. We haven't seen the New Day in tag action for quite a while. I think that you need to re-establish the connection and the talent that they have in the New Day as a tag team, and I would definitely have them go over here. Preferably, after that, they could pivot into some sort of title contention with Bryan and Rowan. I'd like to see both of these teams in the tag team division, to be honest. Owens and Zayn never seem like they're going to escape each other. They're always being brought back into each other's orbit. They've pretty much been paired together since they've come up to the main roster, and if they're not going to be separated from each other properly, then why not just make them a proper tag team, give them a run with the tag team championships? You then have a pretty stacked tag division on SmackDown then, because you've got Bryan and Rowan as the champs, New Day chasing, Owens and Zayn chasing, Heavy Machinery, Rusev and Nakamura, the B team. That's actually a fairly solid tag division, and I'd really like to see Owens and Zayn get that chance as a proper tag team. So yeah, I would have the New Day go over here to reaffirm just how good of a tag team they are, because I'd like to see them looking strong while Kofi's champ. That's what I would do. As for what I think the WWE will actually do is, I think Owens and Zayn will probably go over. They can probably tell some sort of story about Big E having ring rust. Owens and Zayn can work the affected area, and I think they'll end up going over to balance out the heel-face dynamic on the pay-per-view. Dirty Dan is in agreement with that, and that's his prediction too. It's Owens versus Zayn. So I'm predicting Owens and Zayn, even though I would like New Day, and Dirty Dan is also predicting Owens and Zayn. So we're in agreement on this one, so that one's kind of pointless, right? I'm going to beat you though, Dan. In a WrestleMania rematch, we've got Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. This one is probably my least anticipated match of the night, which is a shame because I really like Drew and I'm okay with Roman too, but it's that Shane connection that probably puts me off a little bit. I'm also sort of nervous when it comes to this with the commentary, because their WrestleMania match, the commentary went really light, got really lazy, and I just wasn't into the match. So I'm hoping this time it'd be better. I was trying to think of what I would do to actually have some sort of decent conclusion to this match, and it's sort of hard, as it has been with quite a lot of this pay-per-view, because there's some decisions that I just wouldn't have made before and that I find hard to find something good out of. I don't know what I'd do here. Drew really needs the win. Roman also needs the win after losing to Shane. If there is one positive thing that's come out of this whole Shane is the best in the world thing, it's this sort of loose stable that he's got with Drew McIntyre and the Revival, and that's probably just what I'd do. At the end of the day, if they're going to be an actual faction, Drew and the Revival could do with looking dominant. Whether or not Shane gets involved, and I probably wouldn't have him get involved, just have him wait in the back, it'd be a fairly interesting one to have some sort of ref bump, and then the Revival come out, they give Roman like a shatter machine, and then Drew gives him like 3 claymores, and they pick up the win. And that way, Roman, it starts looking like he might be taking the loss a little bit more. You can tell the story of him trying to get back on his winning streak. He's not just, I'm Roman and I win all the time. So yeah, I'd probably just have the Revival get involved, put Drew over, and have that faction look fairly strong. As for what the WWE will do, I think that they... You know what? I'm gonna stick with Drew winning on this one. I don't think that they're gonna give Roman the win, even though people think that he needs it back. The whole Shane thing is sort of weird, and it is a shame, but Drew McIntyre is a legit contender. He's a legit competitor, and I think that it would just make him look good if he went over Roman. I know that it's wishful thinking, and I'm probably going to lose in this, but I'm going to stick with Drew McIntyre. But Dirty Dan is predicting that it'll be Roman Reigns. I think it's going to go right back to that normal Roman booking, Dan. So this one is the first one where we're sort of deviating, and that's going to be interesting. I'm going to be really, really rooting for Drew now. So yeah, I would go Drew. I'm predicting Drew, and Dirty Dan is predicting Roman Reigns. For the United States Championship, we have Samoa Joe versus Ricochet. Now, if this was me, I would probably go Ricochet. He's been on the main roster a little while now. He hasn't really done much, save for having matches with Cesaro. Samoa Joe can easily be moved off to any other point of the card. If he loses this United States Championship, it doesn't make him look weak, especially if Ricochet puts in a decent performance between them. I'd like to see some sort of 3-way between Cesaro, Ricochet and Samoa Joe maybe. I think that would be pretty interesting, with Ricochet being stuck in the ring with two people who are much more powerful than he is. That's probably where I'd go with it. Like I said, Joe can be moved off to any other point of the card, so even if he doesn't feud with Ricochet and Cesaro, Joe could easily be moved off for a feud with Finn Balor for the Intercontinental Championship. He could be moved off to feud with Kofi or Seth, or even just a grudge. So I think that's one of the good things about Joe, is he's quite versatile. He works well against pretty much anyone. You know, even someone like The Miz, I think he could get a pretty good, decent feud out of because of the mic work. So I would have Ricochet going over with this one. And you know what? Because they have done this low-level Cesaro-Ricochet feud, I think they're going to want to keep doing that, but they want to give it some stakes. So I'm actually going to stick with that WWE will go with Ricochet. Dirty Dan predicts that Samoa Joe will retain. Got to say, Dan, probably a safe choice, probably the smart choice if we're being honest, but I'm sticking with Ricochet because, you know what, I like creativity, so shoot me. The Cruiserweight Championship will be defended in triple threat action with Tony Nese, the champion, against Akira Tozawa and Drew Gulak. Now, I'm not familiar with the 205 landscape. I do know that Tony Nese hasn't had the championship long. If I had the book here, I would have Tony Nese retain, and then he can transition into a one-on-one feud with Drew Gulak. Gulak has had a new character change, I've heard. If Nese retains here, he can pin Akira Tozawa, and then Drew Gulak can say, "You never beat me." They can transition into a one-on-one feud, and Gulak can pick it up at SummerSlam, allowing a little bit of a bigger stage for him to pick up the win and allow Tony Nese to have the championship a little bit longer. So I am going with Tony Nese to retain. I also think that WWE will go with Tony Nese to retain. But Dirty Dan is going out on a limb, and he's saying that Drew Gulak will win here. So let's see who comes out on top with that one, shall we, Dan? Seriously though, you could be so much more on point with this than me, because I have no idea when it comes to the 205 landscape. Yeah, I'm sticking with Tony Nese. and Dan's going with Drew Gulak. The SmackDown Live Women's Championship will be on the line, with the champion Bayley defending against Alexa Bliss with Nikki Cross in a corner. Now, everyone thinks that Nikki Cross is going to end up accidentally costing Alexa the match, and then those two will separate because Bliss will take it out on Nikki. This seems like a bit of a safe way to go, a little bit of an obvious way to go. So what I would probably do is throughout the night sprinkle a few of those backstage segments in, have Bliss sort of bossing Cross around, just disrespecting her, not not being an actual true friend to her. And as the night goes on, Nikki's sort of slowly realising, maybe Bayley shows her a bit of proof that Alexa's been lying to her. Then in the match you have some sort of spot, like a submission spot or something like that. Maybe Bayley's going for a top rope move like that Bayley to belly that she sometimes does off the second rope or something. Just a spot where Nikki could come and save Alexa. Alexa's looking at Nikki, just sort of begging for it, but Nikki just shakes her head and leaves it. Bayley picks up the win. Then afterwards, Bayley goes to shake Nikki's hands, and she just blows her off and walks off. That way, she's then aligned with neither of them. In the coming weeks, she can talk about how she was used by Bliss, and she's realised that she just needs to go out on her own and do what's best for her, etc., etc. And I think that you could easily build to a Nikki, Alexa, Bayley three-way at SummerSlam. So that's probably what I'd try to do here. So, yeah, I would have Bayley pick up the win and separate Alexa and Nikki, but not by Nikki accidentally costing Bliss the match and having Bliss turn on her. As for what WWE will do, I think that they will go with Bayley. I don't think that they want to take the championship off Bayley yet, and I think that if they're going to do it, it will be a massive surprise because it's such a B-level pay-per-view. I think they'd want to wait more for SummerSlam. So I'm going Bayley here with the clean win, and Dirty Dan is going Alexa Bliss. So we are actually going for quite a lot of the opposite options here, so it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. I think this could be a good match too. The only problem that I have with Bliss and Bayley is like the promo work. I wish that they'd keep them apart from each other, but other than the cruiserweight match, I think this could be another one of the best matches of the night. I'm quite looking forward to it. So yeah, my solid prediction is that Bayley retains, and Dan's going with Alexa Bliss picking up that championship. The WWE SmackDown Live Tag Team Championships will be on the line. It's Daniel Bryan and Rowan, the champions, versus Heavy Machinery. Now, I'm not sure what I'd do with this. I definitely know that I'd have Bryan and Rowan retain, but I don't know where I'd go after that in terms of storyline. Heavy Machinery could probably do with some sort of big win, but I don't think that they're ready for a run as the tag champs. I definitely don't think they're more deserving than Daniel Bryan and Rowan, so I would definitely have them retain here. I'm trying to think of some sort of cool angle that I'd have coming out of it, and I think maybe if Bryan and Rowan won in some sort of underhanded way, after the match, Heavy Machinery try to have some sort of brawl with them, then the New Day come out and try and stop Bryan and Rowan from running away, and we get some sort of tag team locker room emptying brawl, let's say. So you have just all the face teams, all the heel teams come out, have a big tag team brawl. You could even have Owens and Zayn coming out as well, and that's how you can establish them as actual tag team. And then on Tuesday, start some sort of tag title tournament, and that way you can sort of have the New Day, Owens and Zayn, Rusev and Nakamura can get a restart. And yeah, so I think that's what I'd do. I'd have Bryan and Rowan retain, some sort of tag team brawl, and then a tournament starts. As it goes, I think WWE will go with Bryan and Rowan retaining, And I think that me and Dan are on agreement with that, because it's just the obvious choice, isn't it? I can't imagine having Heavy Machinery pick up the championships at this point. I don't see what they've been doing in terms of work to deserve it, and I just wouldn't really be that interested. I think Bryan and Rowan are a real money team for that tag division. Having Daniel Bryan as that level of a main eventer in the tag team division, I think just makes it much more credible, especially if you add in the New Day and Owens and Zayn, like I said, because they're some big stars. So yeah, I'm sticking with my solid prediction that Bryan and Rowan retain, and me and Dirty Dan are in agreement with that one. The WWE Raw Women's Championship is on the line. Becky Lynch puts her championship up for grabs against Lacey Evans. I think that this one's just a fairly obvious one. I don't know who she's going to feud with afterwards, but I would have Becky retain. I think that that's what WWE will do as well. And again, Dan is in agreement with me on that one. I think everyone thinks that Becky's going to retain here. I don't know what I'd do. I really don't, because I think there's some salvageable feuds on the SmackDown Live side of things with the women's division, but once Becky's done with Lacey, I'm just afraid that they're going to go back to Becky and Charlotte again. I'm just not sure what I'd do to end this feud, really. I think I'd just have some sort of... You've got to try and keep Lacey looking good as well, so I think maybe I'd go for some sort of big spot towards the end of the match. Maybe Becky trying to spear Lacey through the barricade. Lacey goes for try and get her back in the ring. Doesn't think that she can. Goes for the count-out victory. Becky gets in at like 8. Lacey goes for the women's right, and Becky rolls her up into the disarmer. Honestly, I don't know. I am really lost when it comes to where I would go afterwards with this. Like either just some sort of tournament again, like I said, with the tag team titles. Jesus, it's like I said, I think that Becky will retain, and I really don't know where I'd go afterwards. Let me know in the comments below who you think Becky should face as her next opponent, because I don't think that they've got anyone built up with legit credibility, although... and anyone who's been listening to the podcast for a little while now will probably find this amusing. Dana Brooke has just had that injury, and I think that people are getting behind Dana quite a bit. In the last few months, I've really seen people turn around on Dana Brooke, and maybe her just getting even a one-off opportunity against Becky might be quite a cool little thing. I think it'd be nice to see Becky just sort of face a few different women in the coming months. In terms of, I don't think I want to see her in a long-term feud after this, because she's always locked up with someone. You know, she was locked up with Becky and then Ronda, and now she's been locked up with Lacey. So I think I'd she'd face Dana Brooke, 1 month, and she'd defend the title on TV at some point against Naomi or just whatever. But yeah, I'm really interested to hear in the comments below who you think Becky should face, and me and Dan are both in agreement that Becky retains for this match. Seth Rollins puts his Universal Championship up for grabs against Baron Corbin. This one is a special guest referee match. Oh my god, have I struggled to find a way to salvage this situation. I don't like special guest ref stips for the most part. I think they're usually good as some sort of character thing, but I don't think I've ever seen it used. My first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 28. That's probably my first altogether pay-per-view. Obviously, you had the someone's going to shoot me now because it was like the year after or something, but you had the Triple H Undertaker special guest with Shawn Michaels being the special guest referee, and that was probably the last time I saw it done seriously and used well. So it's really difficult, isn't it, because I think that most people are assuming that it's either going to be Heyman, Brock, or Corbin himself, and I don't like any of those options. I'm not a mark for Paul Heyman. At the end of the day, I wasn't around for the ECW days. I wasn't a wrestling fan as a kid, and as much as I respect the impact that Paul Heyman's had on the business, I don't really want to see him in the ring as a special ref with Seth and Corbin. I don't think that it'll be Brock either, because I can't see Brock wanting to do that. I think that if Brock ends up the special guest referee, then I think we probably will see an actual cash-in. As for what I would do, I'd struggled, and I eventually came up with Shelton Benjamin. He's not been used too much recently. They had him in that match with Rollins a number of months ago. There's that sort of loose connection with Heyman there, and it just means that it's not someone completely random, and it's not Corbin himself. So I would go with Shelton Benjamin, but Seth Rollins would still end up retaining. I'm guessing that Seth retains here, and so is Dan. It's going to be a really interesting one, though. I do want to try and make my solid prediction on who the ref is going to be, and unfortunately I do think that they're just going to disappoint me, and it will probably just end up being Corbin himself, and then some real ref will have to come out, or it's going to be Heyman. I'm probably going to stick with it being Heyman, I will guess, and Seth still retains, and we don't get a cash-in. So yeah, me and Dan, for these last few, have been in agreement. Seth Rollins retains. Seems like a given, unless we get a Brock cash-in at a low level pay-per-view, which I can't see happening. It's definitely still going to be Seth retaining, and me and Dan are in agreement on that one. Just a quick prediction, this one will probably be the worst one of the night, probably clocking in at a high 3, I'm guessing. Finally, I want to talk about the WWE Championship match. It's a steel cage match. Kofi Kingston, the champion, versus the challenger, Dolph Ziggler. Now, I've left this till last because I think that this should be the main event of the night. And I think that it very well could be if we don't get Brock as the special guest referee. This match has the most build going into it. It has the most story and the most weight, and I think that with it being a stipulation match, with it being for that WWE Championship, with it being Kofi, who's got the crowd massively behind him at the minute, I think that this should be the main event of the pay-per-view. You can build up and up to it and have the anticipation building for it, and that way you get to leave on some sort of big angle and leave people feeling like they've just watched something actually worth watching, as opposed to what people will feel like after that Universal Championship match if that main events. I just really think that these two deserve to main event this pay-per-view. It's been a decent feud. Dolph might have overacted here and there, but if you cut through all of that and look to the essence of the feud, I think that it's been a pretty good story. Dolph is just this embittered, overlooked wrestler who looks at his past and sees that he's had all these fights with Kofi and he's beaten him before and knows that you can probably beat him again. Feels like Kofi doesn't deserve the chances that he's been given, and that it should have been Dolph. And I think that that's actually good character motivation, especially with Kofi actually having friends that back him up. You know, you had Xavier help in that situation at Super Showdown, which I don't think was the best choice, but that at least gives some justification to Dolph's character in terms of thinking that it could have been him if Xavier hadn't gotten involved. So I don't know what I would do here. There's a number of ways that you could have him win, really. Kofi, I think, will retain. I'm going for that as my solid prediction, and that was what I would do. It's probably a given that he will win. I think Dan's in agreement with me as well. The question is how to have him win, because he could win with the Trouble in Paradise in the middle of the ring, he could get out that door, he could escape over the cage, and that's probably the option that I'd go with. Probably have Big E and Xavier out at ringside, make it look like they might get involved, but just have them there showing the support to the friend, just egging him on and encouraging him and trying to hype him up and keep him in the match. Then, towards the end of the match, as Dolph does something dastardly and underhanded, like maybe trying to tie Kofi up in the ropes a little bit, he climbs up the cage. Then, as he's like sort of near the top, Kofi maybe does some sort of vertical leap up the side, scales the wall. As he gets up to the top, Dolph's already like getting his leg over, and it looks like he's got no chance. But Dolph is sort of climbing a little bit slower. Then Big E and Xavier are below Kofi, and he does his trust fall off the cage to be caught by Big E and Xavier and lowered lovingly to the ground by his two best friends. I think that would be a fairly decent way to go with it. I think that I'd like to see the New Day not get involved here, but I don't know. The story that they've been telling with Kofi is that he couldn't have done it without the New Day, in terms of them making him feel like a better wrestler and the connection that they've got with him. And I just think it'd be pretty cool if he won by showing just the ultimate trust to E and Xavier, just by throwing himself off the cage, just doing that trust fall that he does and letting them catch him. It'd be such a big moment to end the pay-per-view with, and I think it'd really, really put over that brotherhood that the New Day have. So yeah, I would have Kofi retain after a trust fall from the cage to be caught by Big E and Xavier. Either way, I think that WWE will have Kofi retain, and Dan is in agreement with me there. So those are my predictions for the WWE Championship match. So those were my predictions for Sunday's WWE Stomping Ground pay-per-view. I really like going head-to-head with people, so I'm really looking forward to seeing who comes out on top with these predictions. I've got to say, Dan, if I win, I want a comment saying, "You were right, Mason," and if not, I'll admit that you were right in my video. when I go through the pay-per-view. This has been a really fun one. If there's one thing that I've learned when it comes to the main roster, is you've got to find ways to just enjoy it. And even though I get nervous about watching main roster pay-per-views because the commentary can be a little bit lackluster, doing something like this, like doing my predictions and going head to head with your best friends, is just some sort of way to make it enjoyable, even if you try to predict it wrong and completely get everything wrong and be the best at being the worst. You just got to try and find some way to enjoy it. Either way, I hope that you enjoy WWE Stomping Grounds, whether it's a decent pay-per-view or you just find some sort of silly entertainment out of it. That's all I've got for today, but if you want to stay up to date with WITD, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notify bell and don't leave yourself out in the cold. Right guys, I'm off, and you should have a good one.